that could have been me story. Story 1 went to Taco Bell with mom and friend. They both got a drink, and I said I would just share with them. Even after being offered that mom would buy me one no problem. Next guy in line got a drink. He won a 40,000 Land Rover off the cup contest. Story 2, not me, but my uncle, who is an electrician, was working on the top floors of the World Trade Center. My uncle is someone who will never call in sick. On 911, my grandma convinced him he should stay home because he had a bad cold. Good job, grandma. Story 3, I was at a stoplight in the left lane about to turn onto the highway. Nickelback came on the radio, so I looked down to change the station to something less like nails on a chalkboard. I missed the light change to green. The guy next to me didn't. He drove forward and was immediately T-boned by a truck running a red light on the access road going 70. TLDR, Nickelback saved my life. Story 4, in 2011, the beginning of my junior year in high school, I had surgery to fix a hole I tore in my shoulder muscle. I had it the Monday before the national championship air races on a Saturday in Reno, Nevada, and I lived decently close. We go every year and had tickets to the box seats. Parents decided I couldn't go because my meds were too powerful, double dose of Percocet plus a pill to make me not throw it all up, and I was in a brace, and if I got bumped I could have really myself up, so I stayed home. That night on the news, we discovered that one of the racers had lost control and crashed into the box seats, killing I don't know how many people. If I would have gone, there's no way a doped-up teenager with one working arm would have survived. Story 5, when I was 16, I was at a beach in Santa Cruz with my family and 10-year-old little brother. My little brother started playing with two little girls who were collecting seashells and stacking them on a giant log near the water line. My brother walked away to find more seashells. A few seconds later, a huge wave rolled in and lifted up the log. We found out later that it weighed around 1,000 pounds. When the tide receded, the log landed on top of one of the little girl's chest and face and crushed her and pinned the second girl down by her arm. My parents aided in the rescue efforts, but the little girl whose face was crushed died the next day in the hospital. That could have been my little brother. Beaches still terrify me. Edit, thank you for all the upvotes. To everyone telling me I shouldn't be afraid of beaches, I guess I should mention that I already have pretty severe anxiety, so beaches weren't my favorite place anyway. And after this happened, it kind of sealed the deal. My fear isn't of my own safety, but of my family's safety. I could go to a beach alone, no problem, but not with family. The article isn't 100% accurate because it didn't wash up and knock her to the ground. It had been there all along, and they were playing near its source. Story 6, not me personally, but my grandfather. He was in the Navy in World War II and sent a letter to his wife, my grandma, saying his ship was leaving Pearl Harbor. The letter was dated December 6th, 1941, a day before the naval base was attacked by the Japanese. Edit, this post turned into a mindfuck. My dad was born after the war in 1946. I have the letter at my house, but I'm out at sea runs in the family and won't get home for 2 weeks. Story 7, back in 2012, I was leaving a gas station on my way to school and let a truck go ahead of me. He was in front of me, a stoplight, and when it was our turn to cross the intersection, an SUV ran the red light going about 45. The truck was totaled, and the guy was knocked out and bleeding from his head. I drive a small car, and it scared me to think that if he had it that bad, I could have been a million times worse. He's actually still fighting that ran the light, because he swears he didn't run the light, but I testified for the driver of the truck, and it looks like they are just now settling the lawsuit. Story 8, I was in the service in Afghanistan during a deployment. I was injured, and they had to call medevac to get me out. I had always been the lead vehicle with my team chief, but after I was injured, our team was one-person light, so they switched him out of the lead vehicle and gave the position to a full team. That team hit an IED less than 24 hours later. Killing the driver would have been me, and the TC would have been him. I never complained about my injuries again. Story 9, my friend's mom canceled a double date in California in the 70s because she was sick. The other couple went on the picnic like they planned and both got murdered by the Zodiac killer. Chances are he wouldn't have attacked all four of them, since that's a bigger group, but sucks for the other couple. Story 10, 5 of my ex-girlfriends are currently pregnant or have already had children by the very next guy they dated after me. Dodging bullets like Neo over here. Story 11, the band The Presidents of the United States of America once opened for my dad's band in the 90s. A record label rep was at that show and signed the Presidents the next day. Needless to say, my dad has not let it go. Story 12, in 1996, me and my family were standing a few feet from where the bomb went off in Centennial Park. Luckily, my brother was not feeling well, so we had to leave early. We were driving through the streets of Atlanta and saw police and rescue vehicles flying down the street. We turn on the radio and hear about the bombing, then get home and see if it was right where we were. Crazy. Story 13, when I was 7 years old, a man attempted to kidnap me outside of my school. It was me one other little boy standing there after everyone left. He told me my mother wasn't going to be able to get me sent him instead. He leaned over from the driver's seat and opened the passenger door, trying to grab me. He also called out several girls' names, trying to guess mine. The boy motioned for me to go with him. I took a step back to think first. I did remember my teacher saying a few weeks before a man like this tried to kidnap a little boy who he told he had forgotten his lunch. The boy jumped out of the car as it drove away. My mom pulled up behind him as I was trying to figure what to do at that young age. He drove crazy fast out of there. As an adult, I realized I most likely would have had a very violent and sad outcome. When I watch missing kids reports, I think that could have been me. Story 14, Baghdad, Iraq. The stall of the bathroom trailer that I normally use during my 2-mile walk from my hooch to my work area got hit by a 105mm rocket. I left late, and the rocket beat me to the shitter. Talk about blowing up the bathroom. Story 15, I was invited to a concert in a small venue to see Great White. I had just started a job and was in training, so declined. The show was at the Station nightclub in RI. A fire broke out, and many of the people died. There's video online with some images from the fire in FSL. Story 16, in 2004, a 1-ton car bomb exploded in front of the Australian embassy in Jakarta at 10:30 a.m. I was working a language school on the other side of the road, and every morning I did a U-turn at the embassy at that exact time. The previous night, I had been very tired and was too lazy to fill up on gas, which meant I was 10 minutes late. When the bomb detonated, I was about half a kilometer away. My car rocked, debris rained down on my windscreen, and I thought it was an earthquake. Laziness saved my life. Story 17, one morning in the summer that I was 7, I went across the street to play with my friends in their yard. We did kid stuff in the back area by the fence for a while, and then it got hot in the early afternoon, so we went back to my yard to play in the sprinkler at my house. Now, the fence we were playing by was low and open, and even at 7, we could easily see into their back neighbor's yard on the other side of the fence. There was a little patio and picnic table just on the other side. Early that same afternoon, the dad of the family snapped and murdered his wife and 2 kids. For some reason, he immediately dragged the bodies outside and put them under the picnic table. I'm not saying he would have shot us too, but I remember thinking back then that us deciding to go to my yard was very much fate being on my side. TLDR, at age 7, I didn't have to go nose to nose with a murderer who was dragging bodies. Story 18, left a party in a park early in a nasty part of the North Bronx. 15 minutes after I left, a gang showed up and held up the entire party at gunpoint. My friends had to walk home barefoot, and then convinced the MTA employees to let them on the train since they couldn't even pay for a ride without their wallets or call for help without their cell phones. When I was a teen, a friend offered me a fat line of Molly that he had just bought and was bragging about what a great deal it was. I told him I had homework to do and wanted to be sober when I saw my girlfriend later that day. She was pretty clean and would not have appreciated me being on drugs when she came to see me. That batch was tainted, was either not cleaned properly or was actually something with a lower lethal dose that was sold as MDMA. He railed a fat bump and died a few minutes later. To the multiple people who have commented on the phrase railed a fat bump, if we're really going to argue slang here, then the word rail in this context is being used as another word for insufflate. Maybe in your city that isn't said. That's just how it's said around here. We say lots of dumb around here. Tree Hunted G3-7-22, what do, etc. Story 19, oh, this was a while back. I was at my local library for the unveiling of the new Captain Underpants book. They had activities there for the kids, and I found myself thrust into a circle of kids sitting down. We were supposed to pass around this diaper until the music stopped. Whoever had the diaper last would have to open the diaper. So the diaper went around, and as soon as I had it in my hands, the music stopped. I didn't want to open it fearing whatever was inside, so I quickly handed it to some curly-haired kid next to me. He opened it, and inside was a whoopee cushion. I gave up possibly the coolest thing my elementary self could possibly have come in contact with. It haunts me in vivid memory to this day. It could have been me. Story 20, not my story, but my uncle sold his Apple stock to pay rent and buy beer like 6 months before it skyrocketed. He said he didn't have a lot of stock, but didn't make as much as he could have. Story 21, as a kid, a friend and his parents took me to an Orioles home game against the Oakland as our section was light, so we played around in the seats, running around, and such, and decided to just sit wherever we wanted to. Around the second inning, a man with his wife and kids show up late, and they ask us to move out of their seats. We comply and just scoot down a few seats and continue to watch the game. A couple innings later, Jose Canseco drills a foul ball right into the man's chest. He was pretty messed up and required medical attention. I was sitting in that man's seat before the family arrived. If they hadn't come to the game that day, that would have been me. Story 22, I quit my cheerleading team after I made main flyer at the beginning of the year to go into treatment for anorexia. They won nationals a couple weeks ago, and it's put me in a depressed mood because that could have been me. Story 23, not me. But my grandfather had just been liberated from Auschwitz by Soviet forces. He was hungry, so he went to search train cars for food. Inside, he found a Nazi in hiding whom put his Luger to my grandfather's head the moment he opened the doors. Grandpa looked him in the eye and spoke in German. It's not worth it. He lived to be 90 and passed away 20 days ago. Rest in peace, Abe. Story 24. I was a service representative for the Social Security admin in the Murrah building, OKC. I worked the front reception window, probably 50 yards from where Tim McVeigh parked the Ryder truck. Worked there 10 years approximate. About 3 years before the bombing, my husband got cancer and died. I was offered a job in another town 100 miles away. Took it even though I really didn't want to move, lost lots of friends. Several friends have really suffered from it, but didn't die. I always feel like my husband died, so I didn't have to. I know it makes no sense. We had a young son at the time. He's grown now. So happy I got to see him grow up. He is my pride and joy. Story 25, I own Gmail. Several years back, I found a website that provided email services. It let me pick my own domain, and I wasn't very creative, so I just used my first initial and added mail, and voila, Gmail. Wasn't too popular. Me and 5 family members out of pity had Gmail.com email addresses. I have no doubts that had I kept it, Google would have went another way or paid me $100 for the rights, but at least I can say I own Gmail. Story 26, not me, but a woman I babysat was in Louisiana on the day Hurricane Katrina hit. She was offered 2 flight options. One left early, but had 10-minute layover, so she'd be running to her next gate. The other left 2 hours later and had a 45-minute layover. She picked the one that left early, and it turned out to be the last plane out of that airport. The rest were canceled, and everyone was stranded. Not sure what happened to them. Story 27, I was on the train on my way to my friend's house, and I had to transfer to a different line at a station downtown. I wasn't paying attention and accidentally skipped my stop. So I got off at the next one and decided to just walk to it because they weren't that far apart. As I'm getting closer to the train station, I noticed there are a bunch of cops and people standing outside. It turns out something happened with one of the trains, and the car started filling up with smoke. A bunch of people had to be taken to the hospital because of it, and they temporarily closed the station. It was the train line I was trying to transfer to, and if I hadn't missed my stop, I probably would have been on that train and could have possibly needed to go to the hospital, which would have been bad because I didn't have insurance at the time. Story 28, one of the last days of the school year. Everyone's skipping out early. A buddy asked me if I want to go to the beach. He's picking up Anther Friend's jet ski trailer and then heading out on the water. For some reason, I said no. No particular reason. I guess I just didn't feel like going. He ends up going by himself. By the time I walk from school back home, there's a message from another friend saying that friend 1 was killed in a head-on collision on his way to pick up jet ski. Even crazier was the car he collided with was a client of one of his parents who was an attorney. He actually got out of the car, walked towards the other car to see if they were okay, but dropped dead before he made it all the way to them. Story 29, TLDR. Buying a crappy McDonald's cheeseburger saved me from a possibly deadly crash. When I was on a long, cross-country trip moving to another state, I was going through Louisiana, and it was torrentially raining. I had all my belongings in the world in the bed of my crappy truck wrapped up nicely in trash bags to protect them, and my cab was full of as well. Water was on the highway, and there were several accidents. I saw a bunch of piled-up, burnt-out car frames on the opposite highway. I felt hungry, so I stopped by McDonald's to get a dollar burger. It smelled like there, and the cashier was slow. When I finally ate my burger and jumped back in my truck, I was driving about 5 to 10 miles under the speed limit because of how bad the rain was, as was everyone else. Then I see an expensive sports car go whizzing past, me going at least 30 miles over the speed limit. I cussed at him under my breath, then about 5 minutes later am driving over a bridge and see the same car. It had crashed into several other cars and spun out of control into the bridge wall over a river just minutes before, and everyone was climbing out of their cars in a daze, and I'm not really sure if anyone was hurt. If I hadn't stopped to get that burger, I'm convinced I would have been in that pile-up and in the crappy truck I was in. I probably would have been killed. Story 30 was backpacking New Zealand when the earthquake hit Christchurch in 2010. Was supposed to take a Kiwi tour bus from Nelson to Christchurch the day before the quake, but missed the bus due to being hungover. Story 31, oh God, okay, I know I'm a little late, but this was so close. So about a month ago, I was talking to this girl, and we had fooled around and such, and one day, we went to dinner, and for some reason, she wouldn't go back to my house, even though we had hung out there a few times. We hadn't had yet, but it was coming. So she never gives me a reason to not come go my house, and we part ways. In the next few days, I left for Texas for a month, and when I get back, I ran into her friend, and I asked about her, and her friend told me she was pregnant. Turns out the day she blew me off, she went, and had with her ex, the condom broke, and you know the rest. The best part was it was the condom I left on her side table one day when we hung out. So close, so close. Story 32. My sister is a manic depressive alcoholic. She is overweight, has 2 kids with 2 different men, and does nothing with her life but live off other people's money. But still, I love her. She's a sweet person, but I don't want to emulate her. It's sad because when I think about how she used to be when we were children, I know all that she could have been. She was the most popular girl in school and could have any guy she wanted. Now, I only see her for what she has become. She got to this point because of her manic depression mixed with heavy drug and alcohol abuse. We have the same mother and father, and in my mind, I struggle with these same manic feelings every day. Most days are good, some days are bad. But I have a wife and friends who love me and keep me grounded. I have a good job, go to school, and try to improve myself every day. I've managed to channel my manic depressive light version into making myself a productive member of society. I know that part of what gives me my creative edge is that little bit of crazy inside of me. But that edge cuts both ways, and that's what worries me. When I look at my sister, I realize I could have turned out to be her if I wasn't careful. And I still could if I don't keep control of myself. I'm lucky to have the life I do, and almost all of that credit goes to my wife for keeping me sane. She's always grounded. But I still walk the razor's edge and worry I might end up like my sister if the bad angels of my nature defeat the better ones. Story 33, not exactly a that could have been me story, but the showing of The Hobbit I went to was supposed to be shot up. The cops caught the guy right beforehand, luckily. But if they didn't do their jobs, who knows what could have happened. Story 34, when I worked at Sun. Lots of people were laid off in the early 2000s. I was fortunate to not be laid off. Of course, a good chunk of these people worked at such companies like Google and VMware in the early 2000s. Yeah, a few multimillionaires later, I realized I wasn't so fortunate. Heck, it still happens quite a bit. About 4 years ago, a couple coworkers left for a company with a stupid name. But come on, it's not like a company called Splunk could ever be successful. Story 35, my freshman year of high school. My boyfriend of 2 years broke up with me because I wasn't ready to have the girl he lost his virginity to. A couple months later got pregnant. Story 36, a few years ago, I used to work as a sort of field guy for a real estate broker. This was during the housing crisis. And as the company dealt mostly in REO, his business was booming. Part of my job was to go to the empty houses and make sure they were being maintained and in good enough condition for sale. As you might suspect, empty, foreclosed homes in bad neighborhoods don't stay empty for long, so I always had to frequent the worst neighborhoods and deal with whomever thought it okay to claim a new home. It wasn't all bad, but I'd seen some, so with this in mind, I was tasked with training another field guy. And so I thought it best to take him to the worst areas on his first day, so he knows exactly what he'll be dealing with. The first house we went to ended up being a winner, a 2-story, 2-unit raggedy crack house on the corner 25th and Vermont or nearby. I forget exactly in LA. The front unit was empty, but the doors were busted open and the place was torn up. We tried the door to the rear unit, but it's locked. At this point, new guy had been pretty chill about the whole thing. Having grown up in East Los like me, I knock. A woman on the other side asks us who we are. We state our business, and she unlocks the door. We walk in, and before I take 2 steps, I immediately turn toward the big pit bull that's getting towards my right. Another woman on a mattress on the floor sleepily grabs the dog by the collar and asks what I'm doing there. The other woman says we're at the bank, her and the dog go back to sleep. The situation now calm. I finally get to look at the woman who opened the door. She had answered butt naked and was in the process of putting on some clothes. I fully explained the situation to her bank foreclosure. She needs to find another place before the bank comes to do an inspection of their own, etc. And while this is going on, new guy gets my attention and motions toward the group of about 6 hard-looking mofos who are making their way to us. The oldest guy, late 40s, steps up and asks new guy what we're doing. I back new guy off and talk with the old dude about what's going on. The woman is his niece, and she needed a place to stay. I'm supposed to kick people out, but I felt bad for the guy and woman. So I tell him the bank won't show up for a week and that I'd stall my round until then, so that they'd have some time to find her another place. He's thankful, and we start wasting some time and talking about whatever the best way to deal with rough situations is to treat people with respect and turn them friendly toward you. I've found. So a couple of weeks pass, and by this time, new guy was flying solo. I get a call that I need to go back to that house and check the place out again. I was 5 minutes away, but at this point, I had already been thinking about quitting and said it. I call up new guy and tell him that he needs to check out the house. He's 5 minutes away, but says he'll leave in about 10. When he gets there, though, there are a ton of cops and an ambulance. Turns out a rival gang took out a couple of the guys we had been talking to. The guys that got shot were hanging out in front of the house, and the shooters rounded the corner and just blasted them. I quit 2 weeks later. TLDR 2 fair, I missed getting shot because I was being other guy also misses getting shot because he lagged it at its spelling. Story 37, I was getting off a bridge in Pittsburgh and had two lanes to choose from. The left lane had a car in it. The right lane had none. A traffic light was red, so I had to choose what lane to be in. I normally would have chosen the right lane, so I could hurry up at the green light and get around the guy. I was feeling like a nice guy that day and decided to just take my time and stayed in the left lane behind the other car. During that red light, a car came in that right lane at over 80 miles per hour and ended up crashing, killing the man in the car. I saw the car go up in a cloud of smoke. If I would have been in the other lane, I would be seriously injured and a coma dead. But I choose the left lane, so I'm alive to share this today. Story 38, not actually me, but my cousin missed his train to work on July 7th, 2005, because he overslept, and that train ended up being one of the trains that got bombed in the London terrorist attack. Story 39, I ran the Boston Marathon last year. It was my 14th marathon, and my normal marathon time would have had me crossing the finish line right when the bombs went off. I happened to be 3 months pregnant. My doc told me I could run, but I had to slow down a bit for the sake of the baby. I slowed down, and I was stopped by security 12 miles before the finish when the bombs went off. I'm pretty grateful to that baby. Story 40, not me, but my mom. She can hardly tell the story without crying. One day, she was shopping at a Texas mall. A man approached her asking about modeling and if she would mind doing a photo shoot. Now, Mom was a knockout in the 70s ADS, but she has one snaggle tooth. This doesn't take away from anything, but her head told her that no one would want to take pictures of a girl with imperfect teeth. The guy kept pressuring her and eventually got slightly aggressive and started to follow her out to the parking lot. Mom grabbed a guy nearby and had him walk her to her vehicle. She later found out the guy was Ted Bundy. Story 41, this story still me up. I was in a mounted convoy in downtown Baghdad. I was the fourth vehicle in a 4 Humvee convoy. Typical SOP, standard operating procedure at the time during an IED strike, was for the fourth vehicle mine to pull alongside the dirty side hit side of any vehicle that was hit as my medic jumped out and provided first aid while my gunner and dismounts provided cover with their weapons. Well, the third vehicle in the convoy got hit no more than 20 meters in front of us and kept rolling. It was the loudest thing I ever heard in my life. Instantaneously, there was machine gun fire everywhere. I screamed at the vehicle commander if I should pull alongside the dirty vehicle. He didn't respond. He was in shock. My gunner, a ranger. Best damned ranger I ever knew, was blasting away at dudes. He screams at me to stop. I hit the brakes. About 5 seconds later, another IED rips through that same third vehicle, and it comes to a stop. I couldn't see. It was like what I imagined to be. It smelled like burnt flesh and sulfur from the explosives. It went from clear to pitch black instantly. My dismounts got out. The medic rushed the hit vehicle. They told me to pull back in my vehicle to protect the scene. No one would tell me what was going on, only that I had to stay on my truck and protect the platoon. They didn't tell me until we got back to the FOB forward operating base, and the helicopters had flown away that one of my buddies lost his arm. Another had a hole through his leg the size of a baseball, and shrapnel was embedded in everyone. And one of my closest friends died when a gigantic piece of spalling from the explosion ripped through his side and popped out his opposite shoulder. My medic held him in his arms as he bled to death. If I had moved along the dirty side of the vehicle, that would have been me. I went through a long period of self-loathing and blame. I still deal with it, but I've gone to counseling and gotten help instead of letting it fester and kill me. A lot of dudes in my unit didn't, and it didn't turn out so well for them. Moral of the story for me, I went through some, but I know there's other guys out there that have gone through similar or the same as me. We have to stick together. If I see someone that needs help, I don't hesitate. I know the signs because I lived through them. TLDR. I should have died in an IED explosion, but friend died instead. Get help for people that you know are having problems instead of waiting until it's too late. Story 42, I used to volunteer for an international nonprofit, and they hosted this big annual gala in 2010. I got posted to work the coat check and assigned a partner. I'm a girl and was 20 at this point, and the dude was 25. He was a bit weird, not super creepy, but just gave off a weird vibe and was annoying. After the event, he added all the female volunteers to Facebook. I didn't add him back because he was annoying. One of my friends did add him back, and a couple of years ago got a call from the police asking how she knew him, why. They were FB friends, blah, blah. Turns out he was the accused rapist murderer in a very high-profile case. Not sure if it's kosher to give out his name. I have pictures of us together from the night of the gala. Not really could have been me, but still weird to think I spent hours of my life bantering with an accused edit L, since the omission of this word seems to have caused an uproar. Rapist killer. Edit I obviously didn't make it clear that his status is still accused. The trial is in March. Also, he lied about being 25, as he's 31 now. Still creepy to think about. Story 43, I did a Disney World internship driving for the Kilimanjaro Safari. One morning, I was in line to get my first truck of the day and was talking to this little girl on a truck in front of me while I was on the ground. Her mom turns around, and it's Tina Fey, my celebrity idol. I stuttered a few sentences before the person assigned to her truck got on. My assigned truck was the next one. If I had clocked in maybe 15 seconds earlier, I would have been on that truck. Now I'm upset about it again. Story 44. This one time, when I lived in Chicago, I had plans to meet my then-boyfriend for tacos. I was heading up the stairs to the train platform when the train was boarding passengers. The conductor saw me and waited. I later found out that a few minutes later, a man armed with a sawed-off shotgun robbed people on the platform. For a few weeks afterwards, every time I missed a light or a train, I wondered if something like that could happen to me. Story 45. My school is in a shitty neighborhood, and there's this randomly placed parking lot really close to school, but not actually owned by the school, situated behind some businesses on the street. This is where I park. I was late for class by 30 minutes because of the God State Troopers. I park in the parking lot that day. Nothing's wrong. I went home, didn't notice anything wrong all day. I come back for class 2 days later. There are cops and press everywhere. Gonna find out I just missed this other woman being kidnapped. Her body was found a week later, edited for clarity. Also, a week later, I was walking to the parking lot from the opposite direction I usually come from and noticed blood all over a telephone pole. It could have been unrelated, but it scared the out of me. Story 46. When I was 8 years old and having treatment for leukemia, the Make-A-Wish Foundation paid for me to go to Disney World. Then last year I turn on the TV and see this Bat Kid. I felt cheated. I'd have made a way better Bat Kid. Story 47. I'm late to the party, but whatever. About 2 years ago, my friend and her parents died in a plane crash. As soon as it got in the air, it hit some bad wind, flipped, and blew up. They asked me to go on that trip. There hasn't been a day since that I haven't thought about that day and the what-ifs, what I would give to hear her voice again. Story 48. A couple years ago, I went skydiving with a friend and his family. It was all of our first time, so you had to jump tam an instructor strapped to your back. A week or so later, one of our instructors had a malfunction in both of the parachutes, or something. Didn't get the full story. But either way, the instructor and his jumper both died. My dad kind of gave me about it and told me I was almost a pancake. Story 49. On March 11th, 2011, I was traveling by local train from Tokyo to Niigata. I was set for a homestay program on Sato Island. I got to the pier around 2 and had lunch and waited for my boat. Then, the quake, it shook the building for half an hour and an amazing number of aftershocks after that. Some of those trains I'd been riding on to get there swallowed up, disappeared. I had to take the bullet train to get back a few days later, and I was only lucky to get the ticket. Story 50. This is kind of minor, and I'm not really that upset about it, and may need some context for anyone who doesn't play Magic the Gathering, but I'll do my best. Sorry in advance for the wall of text. Several years ago, following the release of a new set of cards, World Wake, I walked down to my local game store after class to pick up some booster packs. I got down there, and another guy about my age was walking up at the same time, coming from the opposite direction. I get to the door about a second before he does, and being the kind of person who does stuff like this, held the door open for this other guy. He smiles, thanks me, and steps into the store, and I follow him on in. He heads to the counter where they sell Magic cards, and I realize he's likely here to buy some of the new set as well. So I get in line behind him, and he asks for just one booster pack, just the one, and the woman behind the counter grabs the top pack from the pile of this store, keeps booster packs in a single pile, rather than in the boxes they come in. He hands her some money. She hands him the pack, and I step up as he moves off to the side just a little bit and starts opening the pack. I ask for 4 or 5 packs. The woman takes them from the top of the pile and hands them to me, and right then the other guy starts cackling. I look over at this guy, who now has the hugest shite-eating grin on his face, and he, seeing me looking, pulls out one card from the pack. For those of you not in the know, each booster pack comes with a large number of commons, 3 uncommons, and 1 rare or mythic rare. In addition to this, something like 1 in 15 packs has what we call a foil in the pack, which is essentially an additional card which can be of any rarity whatsoever. This guy pulls a card out from the very back, where the foils are Foil Jace, the Mind Sculptor. This might not mean much to most of you, at least not to those of you who don't play Magic or any other TCG, but what might mean something to you is the monetary cost of some of these cards, which is literally more than their weight in gold. Foils of Jace, the Mind Sculptor, go for somewhere in the vicinity of $450 if I hadn't held that door for him. That card would have been mine. TLDR, I held a door open and lost out on free cardboard money.